But after the accident in turn 4 at the end of the Daytona 500, we've lost Dale Earnhardt.
The sr.s autopsy of Dale Earnhardt report was finally released. The unsettling information that was inside shocked racing fans. All-time, Dale Earnhardt Sr., also known as the Intimidator, was a brave NASCAR driver who seemed impossible to beat on the track, for he was a top driver for 20 years and won many times, winning 7 titles and getting the love from friends everywhere. His black Chevrolet was one of the top 3 brands' most well-known cars in American racing, but what was written in his medical report was so important that NASCAR changed its right-away safety rules. So what did doctors find out that made everyone say, "This is that day when everything changed"? February 18, 2001, began like any other day. Day 2 of the race at Daytona International. Dale Earnhardt Sr., better known as the Alarmist, was in charge of his well-known black number 3. A lot of Chevrolet fans filled the stands, came to life, and no one could have thought that by the end of the day this would be a big loss for NASCAR. Dale had been riding for over 40 years. In 20 years, he had won 7 titles and made it through a lot of accidents that would have ended other as a driver. He was tough and bold, and looked almost impossible to break on the track, which is why what came next was so shocking. In the last lap of the Dale did what he did at the Daytona 500. Best for keeping his friends safe was his son Dale Jr. and driver Michael Waltrip were going up for first and second place. They went ahead, and Dale Sr. was behind them. It was stopping other cars from moving. Smart move, a plan for the team that worked. How much experience he had, but as they went into turn 4 with the checkered flag not even a second ago, something went wrong. Sterling Marlin's car hit it. It wasn't hard with Dale's back bumper. Hit just a small bump that all the time in races, but at 160 miles per hour even a light touch can kill. The car began to slide down the track. All of a sudden shot up toward the outside wall. Ken Schrader's car pulled up next to him, and the 2 cars hit each other. The third Chevy Dale owned hit the concrete wall. Hit first. The crash outside, it didn't look that bad. There wasn't a fire or a blast. Violent flipping when only a car hits a slide up the wall and stop, but something was very bad, and the frightening information found in the work of Dale Earnhardt Sr. Soon, the autopsy report would show exactly what took place in those few seconds. That everything changed. The first sign something was Ken Schrader was the first person who got it wrong. To get to Dale's car after the accident, as a Ken, another driver, had seen a lot of, he knew what a normal accident was. Saw how cars looked and knew how usually did something after hitting the wall, but Ken looked out the window of the third car, his face changed. Later, Ken told press that he wouldn't talk about what he saw, that he said he couldn't talk about it that day. His own safety, not to keep Dale's privacy, but because of what he saw, didn't want to put it into words. His being shocked was the first sign that it wasn't just another crash, they said. In minutes they rushed to the scene. Dale was quickly taken out of from a car to an ambulance, but even as they put him on a bed, like always, something felt different. Sounds of a driver being upset about being upset or wanting to know about his car. There was only silence everywhere. It was quiet as the ambulance raced to Halifax Hospital is only 2 miles away from the track. Nurses and doctors were ready. While waiting, they had helped many racers, heard before and knew how to deal with them. Not even the worst cases, but this when their skills wouldn't be. Fans were happy enough while Michael Waltrip won, and Dale Jr. came in second. A much darker story was taking place at the hospital. The medical, as the team found things that would be more specific in the autopsy report, results that are so upsetting that they would haunt the racing world for all time. At 5:16 p.m. Eastern Time, doctors and statement that changed the history of NASCAR. Jr. Dale Earnhardt was dead. He was the one who seemed unbeatable, who had lived through every what the sport could throw at him. It was over, but the shock was still to come. Happened when the autopsy showed exactly what happened and why it happened. Crash. After it was revealed that Dale had died, everyone wanted to know how such a crash that looks like it killed one of the most difficult drivers in NASCAR history. The accident took place so quickly that even the most of the time, TV cameras barely caught it. The people in the stands had no idea something bad had happened until much later. NASCAR officials right away started to look into every aspect of the crash. They looked at video footage from different angles, looking at each shot to figure out what went wrong. They looked the damage to the car, the angle of the hit, and how fast Dale hit the wall for a race. Everything looked fine. By mistake, until they began digging further in, the car itself told a strange story. The harm wasn't as bad as other cars had walked away from the pilot area. Mostly the steering wheel was still in place and whole. The seat seemed to be in the right place. Placed correctly from the outside, it looked like the kind of mess that it should have led to maybe a bone or two, not death. But looks can be misleading, and the annoying details found in the Autopsy of Dale Earnhardt Sr. report would soon say why the apparently survivable crash killed everyone. The medical examiner's report would show that the real harm wasn't it happened and could be seen from the outside. Inside Dale's body in ways that were which is shocking, and experts in sad racing began to understand that they didn't get it just like they thought they would. If Dale Earnhardt could die in what like an everyday accident, then the driver on the track was more at risk than anyone thought the sport would be. They needed answers quickly. Those would be in the medical report. Answers, but the unpleasant facts that it would be tougher to accept limited than no one thought what doctors found would happen. Not only say how Dale died, find out that NASCAR had been ignoring a autopsy has been a dangerous problem for years. Start of the Volusia County Medical. The examiner's office was used to taking care of Dale Earnhardt's top cases are tough, but their exam was different from any other taken care of before the whole race. The whole world was waiting and watching for answers to all findings. Every feature would be closely looked at, and every decision would help make the future of the sport. Dr. Thomas Parsons, the partner, the medical inspector, began his work, having faith that his story would be read by there were millions of people he had to check out. Being exact and completely honest about what he found, the strange facts he was about to find out would shock. Both had medical experience. The first thing Dr. Parsons told the doctors what was seen was that Dale's wounds were not what he thought he would see from such in the crash. Ribs were broken and an ankle and chest from the safety belt. These were bad, however. They were the kind of tears that drivers could live through and get better from. There was something else wrong. While Dr. Parsons continued his upon inspection, he found the injury, the one that killed Dale Earnhardt Sr. It was a baselar head break, a bone at the base of that hurts the area around the skull brain stem. This kind of harm is it's always fatal because it breaks how the brain is linked to the rest of it was said that the fracture was a ring fracture, which means it went all the way around Dale's head. It came about when his head whipped forward rough during the crash and then broke back just as hard. The move only just a second, but it was enough to cause terrible damage. What made this what they found was so upsetting that Dale died right away, so there is no pain, no battle, and no chance to fight for his life. He was running one moment and he was gone for a man the next second, who had made his name by being it was hard and I never gave up. Sad ending, but the autopsy report wasn't done yet. Dr. Parsons had more upsetting facts to find out, and each one would add one more piece to the how one of NASCAR's best drivers died so quickly. Legends had been taken away. What you need to know about safety tools. As Dr. Parsons went on, as he looked at Dale's body, he made another unsettling news that would send shock waves through the race world. The tools for safety that were meant to keep Dale safe had failed in some ways. No one thought these results would be in some of the most divisive parts of full autopsy report. The 5-point, the safety belt that kept Dale in his seat, showed signs of being under a lot of stress. The belts had made deep cuts on his body, proof of how hard they had worked to protect him during the crash. But the left was not working right. The part of a lap belt that goes across the waist of the driver on the left side. Based on the medical report, this important piece of safety gear had broken it all. The belt that was meant to hold the lower part that held Dale in place had snapped, letting him move forward in his seat. While this movement may hit you, had something to do with the deadly head. The injury that killed him was found. The broken belt caused a lot of trouble. Concerns about the safety of NASCAR standards. How could a piece of gear that motorists put their lives in just break it up? Was it if there had been a production flaw, installed it wrong, or was there was something about the crash that too much force for any belt to handle? Bill Simpson, whose business made the seatbelt, was in the middle of a storm of abuse that some people put the others blame his work for Dale's death. Defended the belt by saying that it had did as well as could have been expected in conditions that were impossible. The argument got so hot that Simpson was finally killed. Angry fans have made threats, but the most troubling thing about this was meant for other drivers. If Dale Earnhardt's, then every safety gear could break down. A driver on the track could have been it. There was a chance that the autopsy report showed a problem that was more than one sad because of the crash. It showed where all of NASCAR's safety measures worked for decades, but as the studies went on, for even more shocking facts came to light about what really the broken bones that killed Dale belt was real, but it wasn't the main guilty party. The real killer was they could have been stopped, and coming to terms with things would be the most frightening fact about all. The real reason for death. As more scientists looked at Dale, they did an autopsy on Earnhardt Sr. Seen something very troubling. Dale Earnhardt wasn't the first NASCAR driver to actually die from a basilar brain fracture. 3 more cars had been hit by death from the same kind of injury in the months ahead of the Daytona 500, Adam Petty, Kevin Kenny and Tony Rohr. This wasn't a by chance, it was an epidemic. NASCAR had an issue that killed people, and the sports leaders didn't see it coming until it happened. Was too late to hide. The troubling facts found in the autopsy of Dale Earnhardt Sr. report were only proof that drives were putting their lives in danger. Risk for months. Dr. Randy Hanslick, chief executive of the National Association of Medical Examiners, looked over the 7-page report on the exam and confirmed the basilar head is what everyone fears the most. Break was caused by the violent moving of Dale's head like a whip. During science was at fault for the crash. Had an easy answer, but NASCAR didn't. Needed drivers to make it work. The fix was called a head and neck for hands. Supporting gear that linked with their drivers had on. This Dale's head would not have hit the ground. From quickly moving forward and backward with so much dangerous force had been on hand for many years, but most cars Dale wouldn't put it on. Dale had been one of the biggest foes of the hands device. He felt bad about it and stopped him from turning his head. During the race, he thought that running was meant to be dangerous, and that a lot of safety gear would take away from the thrill of the sport. Sadly, what he did may have killed him. Robert Heward came up with the idea for the HS device, looked at the medical report and came to a very sad conclusion. I can't promise that the hands would have kept everyone safe in this crash, but it would have helped him. But those words would keep coming back to the racing group. Will always be the most troubling thing was how nobody could have stopped Dale's death. There was technology that could have saved his life. There was knowledge and the right tools. But pride, custom, and being against change had kept it out of in his car on that terrible February day. The debate over a cover-up as the autopsy. When the results were made known, some people being asked if NASCAR and the medical inspector told the whole story. Truth. The upsetting facts found in death certificates for Dale Earnhardt Sr. What a shock, but rumors started getting that even worse information out there was kept secret from the public. That the autopsy caused a lot of trouble. Pictures taken in Florida in these records are usually public records that anyone they want to see, but Dale's widow Teresa Earnhardt went to court to get she claimed that releasing photos that were sealed they would hurt the useless. The Orlando Sentinel is for family and fans in its appeal. The newspaper said that the public had the right to see everything, proof that they wanted to have a medical expert who is not part of the pictures to back up the official results. The court case went on 4 months, giving rise to more questions than answers. In the end, the Florida lawmakers signed the Earnhardt Family Protection Act into law, which made videos and pictures of autopsies and audio records must be kept secret. A court order and proof of good reason why they let some fans go came up with conspiracy ideas about what the pictures may show, that they were curious about if the wounds Dale had were even worse than asked if there were any signs of other. NASCAR didn't want to keep these problems secret, and the mystery grew when several first rescuers gave different stories about what they saw at Tommy Props. One of the first helpers to get to Dale's car pushed the seatbelt to stay in place whole when he got there. But team members from Richard Childress Racing said they saw a belt that was full of holes. Torn these different stories apart sparked more rumors about what really took place. Dr. Barry Myers, an expert on injuries from crashes at Duke University, was finally picked to look into Dale's death on your own report would help put some of there would be trouble, but it would also show more troubling information that made making the disaster even worse. To know the truth when it came out was easier, and it's more complicated than conspiracy ideas thought about. But the harm was already done, had been done. The argument had not sure if NASCAR will stick to concerns about safety and openness that it would take years to finish the study that have changed all of NASCAR's own investigations. More than $1 million went into Dale's death. A lot of money and months to finish the 300-page study they put out was the largest and most thorough safety study in what they found in the race history. What was upsetting about the autopsy, they showed how many things had gone wrong all at the same time to make such a terrible event that the probe team put together every second of the crash using computers with fast cameras, a crash test and models dummies. They found that Dale's car at a certain point hit the wall between 55 degrees and 59 degrees. That brought all the force of impact straight into the cockpit where the crash happened, and how fast it was thought to be, between 157 and 161 miles per hour, which sounds really fast, was in fact in the range of crashes that other cars had made it through. The angle and the way were different. Dale's head moved when they hit it. Using sliding tests with cars that are the same as the inspectors for Dale measured the forces engaged in the accident that Dale, what they called a crash impulse, barely 80 milliseconds longer than 1/10 of a second, but in that short moment when forces were put on his body the same as falling from a height of almost 62 feet. The study also looked at Dale's car very closely. They looked at every bolt, every weld, and every piece of safety gear. That what they found was that the car had did exactly what was planned. What was wrong was the idea wasn't good enough to keep cars safe from what kinds of crashes are the most upsetting. It was found that Dale's death could have been stopped in more than one way. An aid in his hands could have saved his life. Putting down softer walls would have cut down on the impact forces. Even no changes were made to the seat or support. The change could have been in the design. But this may be the most important finding: the fact that NASCAR had ignored the tip too many signs for too long. The string of Basilar's head brakes and other the drivers should have set off an instant act. Instead, the sport had picked to not do anything until its biggest star had did the last thing. That the results of the study would lead to the biggest change in safety in NASCAR history. But it was too late for them in the eyes of Dale Earnhardt Sr. His death had become the alarm that saved many other lives. How Dale's death saved lives, but nothing could bring Dale back. Sr. Earnhardt brings up the disturbing facts. What was found in his autopsy report led to changes that have helped hundreds of lives. NASCAR used the tragedy as the drive to completely change, creating a foundation of racing safety that Dale himself would be pleased with. Inside a few months of the autopsy report, it became necessary to release the Hans device. Every NASCAR driver, the same gear that Dale had refused to put on, was now the law. That every car who got in a race car would be kept safe by technology that could have kept the threat from killing the person. NASCAR also put up better barriers at every steel and foam track, soft walls that take in the impact energy instead of taking it back to the car. These barriers lower the force of impact by up to 70% of crashes that would have been deadly, much more likely to survive. The cars, they were completely rebuilt with safety first and foremost. The car of tomorrow had a wider frame, made the cabin stronger, and materials that soak up energy. All of the driver's seats were moved away from the doors, and roll lessons were used to make bars stronger. What we learned from Dale's crash, NASCAR was also changed by the reaction. Said that crash recorders had to be built into every car, giving doctors get information about the troops right away taken part in an accident. Mobile medical new standards and better units were put in place. Settings were made for treating head and injuries to the neck. The effects speak for since the death of Dale Earnhardt Sr. since 2001, not a single driver has died. During races in NASCAR's 3 series of major cars have been in some really bad accidents that have turned over and caught fire and damage that looked a lot worse than Dale's accident, but all drivers have drovers who left, like Ryan Newman, lived through a terrible crash at Daytona in 2020, owe their lives to the changes that happened because of studying the autopsy report on Dale. Newman's car flipped over at almost 200 miles per hour and was hit by another car while it was upside down, but he left the hospital after only 2 days soon. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has said many times that his the biggest win For Dad wasn't any of 76 race wins and 7 championships, it was the rise in safety that it made people die every time a driver lives through a crash that would have been. Dale Sr.'s influence grows after his death in 2001. Even more disturbing facts were found in the autopsy report for Dale Earnhardt Sr. They were very sad to read, but they marked the start of the best era race past, but fans still miss the intimidating driver of the Intimidator, and they can take comfort in their fighting spirit. Knowing that his last effort, because the sport saved the lives of NASCAR, for the next wave of racers learned that no matter how holy is worth a person's life, the game that used to praise danger now honors life, and the fact that things have changed made the race better for everyone. What began as a terrible loss turned into the trigger that makes thin